Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. Nick, how are you doing?
Hey Vin, I'm good. How are
All
you?
right. I'm good. Thanks, man. So let's do a quick introduction, your name and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Nick Lenczewski. I'm a data scientist, and yeah, I work in the marketing industry, but I'm looking for a new job now, so we'll see.
Cool. And then you just moved to Spain, so we're going to talk all about that.
Yeah, yeah. I got married recently, and my wife is from Spain here, and I moved here to be with her, and now we're married, and here I am.
Cool. All right. So you're a Minnesotan just like me, but you grew up in Buffalo, I believe, which is north of the Twin Cities.
Yep. Yeah, Northwest.
Okay. And then you're about 10 years younger than me at St. John, so the same small liberal arts college that we graduated from.
Yep.
Cool. So right after college, like, what were your interests and what did you do?
Yeah, so I was really interested in other countries and traveling, and I studied math. That was my major, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to use that for a job. But I like to travel, so I moved to China to teach English.
Okay. And then how many years were you there? I think you were there for a while, right?
Yeah, I ended up being there for 3 years at a college, and then I went back another time where I started at English school and also worked at a factory as a translator and English teacher for 2 years. So I was there 6 years total.
Okay, so any maybe lessons or things you can take away from your China experience that was kind of unique, or maybe something you had a nice perspective, different perspective, or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I think it made me um, become more comfortable with uncertainty and kind of living more, I mean, in the moment, I guess you could say. Just because there, a lot of times you didn't know what was going to happen. Like China's changing so fast, and just from one day to the next, it could be stressful at times when you're, planning on taking a trip, and then when you get to the station, and then they say, "Oh no, like you can't go to that city you want to go to today," and so it's like you just kind of have to learn that things can change at any moment, and just that's the fact of life.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big takeaways I had from my experience overseas, especially during the China years too, is that to deal with the things you can't control. A lot of times in America, something happens, and then we kind of get really frustrated, and maybe we swear, or we have a temper tantrum. But then after living in China, I realized that things are going to happen that are out of your control, and you have to deal with it. And the best way to do that is just to be calm and just sometimes accept, some of the losses sometimes. So that's what I've learned and come away with too.
Yeah.
All right. So then shortly after that, you went back to Minnesota, or what happened there?
Yeah, yeah. Then I moved back to Minnesota, moved to Minneapolis, and was there for about 3 or 4 years. I worked at a it was like a print packaging supplier certification company that certified the packaging for private labels of like Target and Walgreens, making sure that the quality of their printing was, good enough to be in the stores. So I was like a customer support, analyst, talking with the printers and the product suppliers, making sure that they followed our program, our website, submitted their samples for evaluation. And I did that for a couple years. And then I was also a medical interpreter for Mandarin. When I lived in China, I learned Mandarin. And then when I got back to the US, I started using that for work. So I would go to hospitals and clinics and dentist offices and help interpret for Chinese speaking patients or Mandarin speaking patients. Um, And yeah, I really enjoyed that work. I worked for several agencies, kind of in person, and then also I worked doing it by video, like video conferencing, where you get a call from, say, somewhere. I was in Minnesota, but the calls could come from all over the U.S. at different hospitals. So one minute you'd be talking to someone in, say, New York in their house. Maybe it's a healthcare worker coming to their house to talk to them, and then the next minute you're in like California, somebody's having a surgery done at the hospital, and you're like there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think that was around 2015, 2017 when we came cross paths when I moved back to Minnesota.
Yep.
And then we got to know each other a little bit better, and then you and I kind of decided to do this digital nomad thing around that time too. So tell us a little bit of your journey there, where you went to, and your experiences.
Yeah. I wrote a book initially about my experience living in China, and that was kind of the start of my, I don't know, like digital nomad experiment, I guess. I had been listening to podcasts and reading books about like people who made money on the internet and they were able to live anywhere in the world, and that's kind of what we initially bonded over, I feel like. And then, so after I wrote the book, I still wanted to like find ways to promote it or make money using the internet, and so I made an online course of my book, which is about how to find a job in China and learn Chinese, travel, kind of drawing on my experiences. And and you and I, we started having a mastermind meeting. I don't remember, was it once? I don't know if it was once a week or a couple times a month, but yeah, we were meeting, and it was kind of in those meetings we started like spitballing the idea of going to Chiang Mai, and I was kind of looking for something, kind of looking to go abroad again, I think, at that point in my life. And then so we both ended up going, I to work on my online course, and you working on your e-commerce stores.
Yeah. So we ended up in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and for a few weeks overlap, and then you took off to Taiwan, and then I think you were doing some video, and then traveled with a monastery, not a monastery, but some.
So around the same time that we were going to Thailand, a friend of mine, she had a potential job opportunity working for a Buddhist nonprofit. They promote the teachings of like Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, and they're based in Taiwan. So I went there as kind of a potential content creator job, making videos and translating, helping build their English website.
Yeah, and then I think you did that all the way up to like COVID. Around that time, you kind of made your way back.
So I'd never actually. So I kind of worked as like a paid volunteer, I guess you could say, kind of traveling like with the monks and the nuns. We went to like France and China, and they would go to these places and speak. And then I was there kind of filming, and then I would make a video about the experience in English for like Westerners or English speakers to view. And then, but I wasn't able to get the work visa because they didn't have the proper license as a nonprofit. So I ended up working for, fortunately, some friend of a friend. They had a company there that designed and sourced PC parts from China, like fans, cases, cables, those kinds of things. And I was a copywriter and social media manager, or I did kind of all the marketing stuff, a lot of the marketing, making product videos, that kind of thing. So I did that up until COVID. Yeah.
And then you made your way back to the Twin Cities, and then I think you started a new chapter, right, in like being a data scientist. So maybe you could
Yeah.
tell us a little bit of that journey.
Yeah. So I initially like learned about data science and big data about I think it was in 2013, and I was thinking about going to school for it, but the cost was just so much. It was like 75,000 I think for like tuition plus living fees for a year. So it was just a lot, and then I got a job, and I don't know. I just somehow it got put on the back burner. But then when I got back, I did a boot camp. It was called Springboard, and it was 5 months online in data science. I think it was like $10,000 maybe at the time. But yeah, I did that, and then I got a job shortly after finishing that in the marketing industry.
Okay. And then you did that for a few years, right, in Minneapolis?
Yep. Yeah, 2.5 years.
Okay, what does that entail? Like when people hear about big data, data scientists, to me, I think of big numbers or
Yeah.
maybe Excel sheets or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's um, not far off from that. The way I like to think about it is it's learning from data. Say, imagine you have a graph and you want to predict the price of a house based on how big it is. And you have some different data, like this house is 100, I mean, I'm just making this up, but so this house is 100 square feet and it's $10,000. This house is, 200 square feet and it's like whatever, like $80,000. And so you have all this data, then you can kind of plot a line on the graph, and that line, that's like your model. So now when you get a new piece of data, oh, I have a house that's 150 square feet. But I don't know how much that would cost. Then you can look at your model and it'll tell you it's whatever it is. So it's kind of like that, and that's a very simple model. But you could also extend it to not just the size of the house, but like how many bathrooms does it have, and how many like bedrooms does it have, and how old is it. So you have all these what are called features, and then if you have a model that can use that data, or you build a model that can use that data, and that will, in theory, then you have a model which you can use to then extrapolate. If you have some house where you don't know the price, it will tell you what the price is.
Okay, so what are some of the companies that hire for this or offer their services? Like, are they companies that kind of have niche markets? Are they trying to service other companies? How does that work?
So there are a lot of different companies that would hire data scientists. For example, marketing. I was in marketing. Internet companies like, say, a travel company like Booking.com or Expedia. Also, like security companies. Yeah.
Anywhere where it's like data rich, I'm
Yes.
guessing,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. The
Like
thing
a
is,
Target or Best Buy
yeah,
customers, they need to keep that
companies
data.
with data,
Wow.
like financial companies, because if you don't have data, then you can't. There's nothing to work with. So yeah, data-rich companies.
So I'm guessing like a typical day is you're looking at a couple screens maybe at a desk,
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
you're plotting data maps maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, like you have a model or that is processing data. It's there's input data and then there's output data. So that data that gets output as well as the inputs are in a database, and people might have questions about the data, like, hey, something looks strange here, and so then I might go into the data and look at what is happening. I might use like a spread, like export the data from Google BigQuery, which is like a cloud computing database, and then look at it in a spreadsheet, make a graph of it, or use like a programming language like R or Python to graph the data and look at it. It's kind of like detective work, I guess. So looking for what the data is saying. For example, like, hey, this number is high, I thought it should be low, what's going on, or vice versa, and seeing why that might be the case, if it's maybe there is something really wrong, or in my experience, it's more just understanding the data and then explaining to that person what's going on.
Okay, I've never heard, or maybe there is now, but I never heard of a data science major. And it seems like you said you majored in math. That seems like pretty logical. Would you say that's the kind of conventional background or how to get into the industry? Or what happens if I studied computer science and English literature? Could I still find a job, or it could be good
Yeah.
training in data science?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of the sciences, like math, computer science are probably the two big ones, but it's also like physics or electrical engineering, like neuroscience, people who like work with data and computers. I guess since starting this job, I think I like to think of like programming as like applied math. Like, at least for me, when I learned math, it was pure math. It wasn't applied to anything really. It was more solving problems, but it wasn't applied. But then when you're using a computer, you're actually like using math. For example, one thing that I used to do a lot is sampling. So you have some data and you want to pick random samples from the data. Like, a computer is really good at doing that. So yeah, I'd say those areas.
Okay, and it seems like, if I were to guess, it's like a growing industry. It's in demand. So, would you say that with like the outlook, the next 5 or 10 years, are you pretty confident like it's a growing industry or something to get into?
Yes, I think so. I know there's a lot of like stuff about AI and ChatGPT or DeepSeek, and talk about like job losses, but I think ultimately it's like data scientists that are like building these tools, or they're one of the people helping to build these tools. And so I think as long as you have this kind of knowledge, and you'll have an edge.
And then what are 2 or 3 like entry level titles, and then what would someone expect the kind of salary? Would it be 50 grand starting off salary, 80 or something like
Yeah.
that?
I think like junior data scientist, or data scientist, would probably be entry level titles. There's also data analyst, which they might do some working with like programming languages like R, Python, or like SQL, but probably more using like Excel. This is just from my limited knowledge of this, but that can also be like a springboard to like a data science position. So maybe data analyst, I would also throw that in there. And there's also like data engineer, but that's more like the cleaning of the data, like extracting it from some other source, like a website, and then like putting it into a database so that the data scientists can then use it to build a model and learn something from it. But a data engineer would be another like similar job, but maybe a little different.
So what are the starting salaries that people could
Oh yeah.
expect?
I would say maybe, depending where you are, maybe 80, 70, like 70 grand or something like that.
Wow, so that'd be
maybe
just
80.
pretty
Between
much out of
60 and
school,
80. Yeah,
first job, living in a bigger
yeah,
city, big company. Wow, that
I
seems
think
pretty
so.
decent.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say it's a good, solid.
And I bet you'd be making six figures
Job.
like after 5 years if you're like a manager then
Yeah, I
easily.
think so.
Dang. Okay. Wow. So what would your advice be if like, I majored in art history and design and I'm 5 years in my career and then I hear about the openings and the in data science and I'm interested in that. How do I make the switch? What's the best way? Do I go to community college? Do I buy courses? What's your advice to someone like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I don't know exactly. I think you probably. I mean, I thought the boot camp was a really good way to do it. And I have heard though that because I majored in math, that was also something that really helped me to get that job. At least like the job coach I had at the time, that's what she had said. I think, but I think maybe you have to do like a data analyst job first, and then once after doing that, you can get a data science job. I would say learn the tools like Python or R. Probably Python is the really popular one nowadays that a lot of companies use. SQL also, like just know how to use it because that's also really
But where do you learn that? Like, how do you
useful.
take those courses? Do like Udemy or like how do I get?
Yeah,
How do I
so
start a
there's
Python course?
there's there was one site I used to use called it was called Code Academy. I don't know if it's still out there, still free. Oh, there's one called Data Camp. And I would say like if you learn how to use like the terminal or I forget what it's called on a PC, but like the window where you can type in the command line, different commands for to start different applications that way because as a data scientist or programmer, you're going to need to know how to use that. Like learning basic commands like how to create a folder or delete a folder, how to move from one folder to another, all using the command line. And then after that, using something like a Jupyter notebook, which is kind of like a Word document, but for code, where you type in the code, hit enter, it runs and spits out the output below, and then you just keep doing that. And it's kind of like a Word document for code, basically. So like learn how to use like a Jupyter notebook, or if it's R Markdown notebook. And then yeah, I would say like there's those different resources. Code Academy, Data Camp. I'm pretty sure there's some others out there that are free or that don't cost too much. And
Okay,
then yeah,
so
like a boot camp is probably a pretty good way to show that you're like serious about doing this. Or if
okay,
you want, you could do a degree, but it seems like it might be a lot of time and money, and I don't know if it'll work or not, or if it would be better than a boot camp or not. I guess it depends on your situation.
yeah. So when you were working for your company in Minneapolis, so how about your coworkers? Like, what were some of their backgrounds? Like, were they hard sciences? Were they like big into like data and accounting, that type of
Uh,
stuff? Or did anyone have
yeah,
like I was an art major or something like that?
yeah, yeah. I know one person was not at all related to,
Wow.
or I think, yeah, she was in, not math major, but a different science, and she also I think did a boot camp, and another coworker was a different sort of in the sciences and did a boot camp and then got into data science. I don't know that I knew anyone who was, say, like art history and transferred into it. I mean, maybe they were, but I don't know their background. There was like a good number of computer science people who had like majored in computer science. There were some others who their background was like another science and then they transitioned into data science.
Okay. Okay. So other than like the hard skills, like computer programming, math and all of that. What are some skill sets or maybe some soft skills that you've noticed in like your leadership or managers that had or people that got promoted quicker?
Um, I think good communication abilities. Like when you're working with a lot of data, I think it's easy to just like ramble and like say all the stuff. Like you could fill pages with all the stuff you learned, but it's important to like learn what it is that the person wants to know and then tell them clearly as quickly as possible. Um, Maybe being able to tell a story with data like graphs, but keep it simple. Like don't do overkill. Maybe just like one or two graphs, not like six. Um, yeah, I would say those things and just good work ethic, I guess. Doing your job, do what you say you're going to do, and yeah,
Yeah, I think we started off our careers out of college like being English teachers in China, and I did that for like 2 years, and then I did it another 1 year in South Korea, and so that classroom experience I think is really translated or transferred over to like into my work. Like when I get up and speak to a small group or I talk to a larger department or something like. People always say like I'm a really good communicator. They said, "Oh, you could be a teacher or a professor or something like that." And I think I draw back from my days of teaching. Where you have to speak loudly, slowly, and you have to make it in a way that's understandable. Maybe in your head you understand it, but just because you understand it well doesn't mean the other people understand it well. So, and then just taking the cues from the crowd, like are they bored, are they tired, or they want to move on. So I think all of those skill sets. That's probably one of the most important one that's translated over to like my work now. And then starting a YouTube channel and all that other stuff. That just being a good communicator.
yeah, yeah. I'd agree. I like that job of teacher is like so applicable for I think a
Yeah.
lot of different work.
All right. Okay. So then, I know you wanted to kind of stay in the Twin Cities, or LA. Your company was going well, but you had a personal life change in terms of getting married,
Yeah,
and then actually moving to Spain. So that's a huge jump. Tell us a little bit
yeah,
more.
yeah. So yeah, my wife and I we had met many years ago, and then we took a trip together to. She's from Spain, so we stayed in touch over the years, but we took a trip together to Italy, and then kind of started dating after that, kind of long distance. So we'd go visit each other every couple months. She'd come to Minneapolis, or I'd go to Spain, and then yeah, after a year or a year and a half of dating or so, I mean, I think we're both older, so I think we kind of knew sort of early on that like okay, I think we're a good match, and so but one of us had to like move, so it just happened to be me. We both had jobs or have jobs. She's in her current job still, but both liked our jobs and our lives, in our very respective countries. But yeah, I guess to me it sounded like a good opportunity, to learn another culture, another language. Also, I saw it as a kind of a challenge. I could have stayed in my job and kept, slowly moving up, but I don't think there. I think this was the more exciting and interesting and you know just the better choice for me. So,
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you know, falling in love, marrying someone, and deciding to kind of start a future with someone is definitely, I think, much more important, right? In terms of when you look back on your life, a job, obviously, like it's nice, and you might like the company, like might like where you're at, but at the same time, I think most people choose the more important decision with life and marriage and all that. So kudos to you. What is it like living in Spain as an American? Like, what are some of your challenges, and are they? I'm sure it's not all roses, and there's some
Yeah.
things that you probably irritate you. And let us know what your experience is
Yeah.
like.
I guess the one thing that I love is the weather. Like, it was like it's the end of January now. I think it was like 75 degrees in the sun like a few days ago. Today and yesterday have been cooler, like maybe in the 40s or 50s. But
And what
like
city you're
I'm
in,
in Valencia.
which is like south
It's
of Spain,
southeast. Yeah.
southeast. Okay. Like we're
Or kind of
talking.
like mid east within the country. Yeah, right on the Mediterranean.
So we're talking like fairly big city, smaller
Yeah,
town.
it's the third biggest city in Spain. I think it's like 800,000 people in the kind of the central city.
And it's pretty diverse, or like, do you see other, like, I don't know,
Yeah,
other minorities like Asians
yeah,
or Africans?
yeah. Pretty
Oh wow,
diverse.
really? Okay.
Um, yeah, like cool architecture, like the ocean, amazing. Like there's just miles of beach, nice shoreline. The food is really good. Like there's a large variety of food, so not only Spanish food, but you can find pretty much anything else you would want, like Italian food, Chinese food, so on. Um, yeah.
So
Uh,
I know, like, in the last few years, Spain has been kind of like, quote unquote, like, I don't know, say digital nomads, but a lot of foreign expats have been moving there around COVID or post COVID, and they get like fairly affordable rental property, and then they're working online, and so they're able to geo arbitrage. So have you met a lot of other Americans or foreign expats like living and working there?
no, so I haven't actually really branched out that much since arriving. I've only been here just over 2 months. And yeah, up until recently had been pretty busy. But I guess I have met people, through my Spanish classes, but most of them are either just here temporarily. I don't know that any of them are doing like working online as like a digital nomad, but I do see there are various like digital nomad meetups around Valencia, and I know it was given some kind of award like a couple years ago as like one of the best cities for like digital nomads. I think, or maybe it was like a Internations survey. I don't know if you know that website. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, won some award for being a good city for expats.
And then how are you treated in general, like from the Spanish people? Are they kind of like a novelty, or they're like, oh, whatever? Or there's just,
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean, I'm sure they can tell I'm not from around here, like when I speak Spanish. But yeah, people are, polite, um, you know, kind, forgiving, like, you know, um,
sure.
yeah.
So what about? Of course, it's probably, I can imagine being very beautiful, the architecture, um, the food, and the lifestyle. But in terms of like, how about like jobs, and then actually kind of making money compared to America, where you were used to.
Yeah. So I'm still waiting for my residency permit to be approved, after which I'll be able to start working. But I have done some looking, and it does seem like there are quite a few opportunities, at least in my field of data science. Madrid, of course, is the biggest city in Spain, and I think it seems a lot of jobs are there. Also, Barcelona, the second biggest city. There's a lot there as well. So some of those jobs can also be done remotely. So I've been looking at some of those, and but I have heard things like the unemployment in Spain is pretty high compared to some other places around the world. But I'm not really sure if that's more kind of, I guess, like, I don't know if, for example, data science would be affected, or
Right.
maybe some other jobs that digital nomads might do. I don't know if those would be affected. But yeah, honestly, I'm still trying to feel it out.
So I know you mentioned you're just 2 months in. What's your impressions like? Is it a culture that you think you can adjust to, that you see a future in, or you kind of like, oh man, I kind of want to get back to the States. I'm kind of
Yeah.
homesick, or I don't
I
know.
mean, I think I can adjust to it. I feel like I'm right in like the middle of the culture shock part. Like 2 or 3 months in. At least that was my experience in China. That was like the hardest time. But yeah, I mean, it's like beautiful, like environment. Food is great. People are great. Quality of life is great. So I can see myself here for the long term.
Wow, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Although I do still like Minneapolis and would love to get back at some point.
Yeah, I have the same sentiment. I traveled a lot over the, as you know, like just like you, over spending time in Asia and out different states, and I still call Minnesota home. But I just have other things that I need to take care of first, and then of course my parents are always here, so I end up landing here because it's just easier. So that's my case. Well,
Yeah.
great, great. So, what's in the immediate plans for you, Nick, other than looking for a job or anything else? Anything else
Yeah.
that's exciting?
Well, yeah, learning Spanish. I've been going to classes, trying to get that under my belt. I think that's going to really improve my quality of life here, maybe even more than, well, a job will help a lot too, but I think the language, that'll really help a ton. Um, yeah, and then find a data science job of some kind. And I think too, I've been kind of took a break as I left my previous job a couple months ago, and so to like move here and then have the wedding, and then it was like the holidays, and so it's like now that things are settling down more. Yeah, I think I'm spending more time focusing on data science, kind of um, you know learning a few more things about that, doing some online courses, and then uh, I've been working on a book about my experiences in Taiwan for the last couple of years. So I'll keep plugging away at that. I think it'll kind of be like a memoir, kind of about Chinese culture, like history, philosophy, religion, language, and yeah, hopefully it'll be done in the next year or two.
Yeah, I'll be sure to leave any links below that you have if you need to share. Before we take off, though, what are your impressions of life in Europe in terms of like people in America? They say, "Oh, Europe is like socialist. Socialism is bad." That type of thing. Are there some of that things that annoy you about living in Spain and that type of thing?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really been here maybe long enough to notice um, the fact that there is like socialized medicine is very cool. Especially because I'm still like paying for medical bills back home from some surgery I had last summer. But and so I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I know the taxes here in Spain are pretty high. I think it's like 37% if you make like 65,000 a year, something like that. Um, but yeah, sorry, I can't really tell you much. I mean, life seems more or less similar to life in the States. The cost of things is much less here.
Really?
Like a coffee in Minneapolis is like $6. Here it's like €1 or €2. Like if you go out for coffee, like if you go out to dinner, like in the U.S. in Minneapolis, it might be like 40 or $50. Here it's like 25, like max, I would say, at like a good place. Well, it can go higher, but there are lots of places where you could eat well for like 25. of course, people here do earn like less than in the States. You
Yeah.
know, like a job paying 100,000 would be like ridiculous here, I think.
I see.
But
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay, good inside look. All right, Nick, it's been a pleasure. It's been great to catch up with you again.
yeah. You too, Ben. Thank you.